Hi friends, welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you the 22 books that I read during the month of May. So let's get to it. During the month of May, I read 22 books. I read 6,747 pages, 9 adult, 2 YA, and 11 middle grade. 10 physical, 9 digital, 7 audio. Again, the format can be a little bit different just because sometimes I listen and read at the same time. And I just count that as both just because it's easier. So my numbers get a little bit off there. But I read 4 nonfiction, which is very exciting because my goal is to read 1 nonfiction book a month and smashed it 2 months in a row. So then 18 books that I read were fiction. I had an average rating, star rating of 4.36. And I really don't often read a book that I don't think that I'm going to like. So it is very seldom that I will rate a book under 3 stars, just because when I can find positive things about it and things that I liked and I was entertained by it, usually it's going to get 3 stars. 3 of the books that I'm going to talk about were read alouds that I read aloud to my classroom. And 5 of the books that I'm going to talk about were AR's advanced reader copies. The theme for the silent book club that I am a part of was memoir this month. So I did read 3 memoirs, 2 middle grade memoirs and 1 adult memoir to go along with that. But I wasn't able to actually attend the meeting. So that was kind of sad. This month, I also reached one of my booktube goals, which was to participate in a YouTube live. And I was able to do that while reading the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. It was a buddy read led by Krista with Books and Jams. And she held 4 live shows, 1 for each book within Mere Christianity. And I was able to participate on video for the first 2. So that was awesome. So my next step is actually to host my own live. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but I feel a little bit more confident about being able to do that at some point in the future. So that was really cool. Anyway, let's get my graphic up. The first book that I read in the month of May is Chirp by Kate Messner. And this book follows Mia, who is entering the summer after her 7th grade year. She's a gymnast, and during one of her last meets, she was hurt pretty badly. She loses a lot of confidence and she loses a lot of strength because of this injury. And she needs a change of scenery so that she can try to get that strength back, to get that confidence back, things like that. So her parents take her for the summer to stay at her grandmother's cricket farm. And her grandmother is getting up in years, and everybody kind of is worried about her because she is convinced that somebody is trying to sabotage the cricket farm. Mia believes her, but everybody else thinks that grandma's just a batty old lady. So Mia goes through the rest of the summer trying to help her grandma have a successful cricket farm. She goes to different camps to try to help with her strength. She goes to try to find herself and who she is without gymnastics, but also find ways that she can be and do gymnastics again. It's a really great story. She makes some really neat friends throughout the course of the summer, and she works on this mystery of what's happening at the cricket farm. It's really fun. The next book that I read was Lightfall, The Girl in the Galdurian by Tim Probert. This is an adorable book. It follows Bia, who is a young girl that you see on the cover there. She lives with her grandfather, who is the pig wizard. She's adopted. And they together are the keepers of the flame. And we don't know what the flame has to do with anything. But one day, Grandpa disappears and B goes off in search of him. Along the way, she meets a Galdurian named Cad, and he is the most lovable creature in the entire world. I love this guy. He is so cool. He is an awesome character. I just love him. The illustrations are beautiful. It's a graphic novel, and it's book one. So it ends with a lot of adventure, or it has a lot of adventure, a lot of intrigue, a lot of wonderfulness, and then you get to a cliffhanger at the end. And I didn't even mind because I love the book so much. It was really good. The next book that I read was Knee Deep in Dough by Catherine Bruns, and this is the 10th book in the Cookies and Chance Cozy Mystery series. I love this series. Anybody who has watched my wrap-ups knows that I love this series, knows that they're wonderful in my eyes. We follow Sally and her best friend Josie, who own a bakery together, and they are trying in this 10th book to stay out of the murder business. It does not work well because a very good friend of theirs is accused of murder. So they get involved. I love it. The next book, this book I listened to as well as followed along on my Kindle, was The Secret Book and Scone Society. This by Ellery Adams. This book comes highly recommended by anybody in the currently reading podcast community, and it did not disappoint. This is a wonderfully developed series with wonderfully developed characters. So it takes place in Miracle Creek. And Miracle Creek is a place where people go when they need to heal from whatever ails them. And the citizens of Miracle Creek are there to help them. Nora Pennington is the book seller. She owns Miracle Books, and she does bibliotherapy. So she comes up with bunches of books that they can read to help them survive and help them overcome what it is that they're going through. And she does this because somebody did it for her at some point. What I love about the characters in this book, Nora and June, Estella, and Hester, they all have these very tragic pasts that they're trying to overcome, and they're trying to do it alone, and they're trying to be separated from everybody else in the community in order to work through them alone. And one thing that they discover is that they can't work through them alone. They have to get the help of others, and they come to each other's aids. And I just love that part of it without there even being a mystery. I loved all the characters and everything there. The mystery was very intriguing. We had a visiting businessman who absolutely wanted to be healed, and he is on his way to Nora's to get some bibliotherapy, and on his way there he ends up dead on the train tracks. Nora and June, Estella, and Hester are convinced that it's not a mistake, that it wasn't an accident, and that's what brings them together as friends in order to try and solve the murder. It's wonderful. I love it. And you're going to see some more of this series on here, so beware. Before I talk about more in that series, though, we're going to talk about The Adventures Now by Jess Redman. Jess Redman is just a fabulous author. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I trust her wholeheartedly with my reading life. What she writes, I am going to read, and I'm probably going to enjoy it. This book follows Milton, who loves playing video games. and he is dealing with the divorce of his parents. And while his parents are trying to figure out everything with their divorce, they send him off to his uncle's to live for the summer. His whole summer home thing was like a theme of mine, I guess, in the month of May. But they send him off to live with his uncle, and his uncle lives on an island called Lone Island. And this is the most fantastical, magical place on earth. It's just beautiful. His uncle is trying to find and discover all of the mysteries of the island, and the island, which is a character in itself, it seems, does not want to give the secrets to his uncle. But the island kind of is partial to giving those secrets to Milton and the other kids who are living on the island. It's such a fun adventure. The kids go through all of these wonderful things. You learn great things about their character, and they grow and they develop, and it's just so wonderful. I just loved it. Back to the Secret Book and Scone Society, we have The Whispered Word, book number 2. In this one, Nora's pickiest customer is found dead. And while she didn't really like this customer, she definitely didn't want this customer dead. All signs point towards the mysterious girl that showed up at Miracle Books one day with a hospital bracelet on and looking very scared. So these 2 mysteries, along with some more, all combined together to make this wonderful story. This was my favorite of the 4 that I read in May, the 4 Secret Book and Scone Society books. I mean, there are only 4 right now, but this was my favorite one, number 2. It was a very compelling mystery and a beautiful story. I really liked it. Then I read my first graphic memoir, and that was Just Pretend by Tori Sharp. This was an ARC from NetGalley, Just Pretend by Tori. In this, Tori tells a story about when she was a young girl and her parents were going through a divorce, and she was starting middle school, and she was having a hard time dealing with all of that. And she used creativity and imagination to try to deal with everything. It jumped a little bit, and there wasn't as much description as... That sounds weird because there isn't always a lot of description, but it kind of jumped, and there wasn't a lot of explanation for the jumps in action. And that was a little off-putting for me and a little bit different for me to get used to. But the story was really engaging. The illustrations are really beautiful. I really liked it. I was talking to my students about it as I was reading it, and they were like, so when do we get to read it? And I was like, well, first I have to order the physical copy. So there it is up there somewhere. And it was really good. So now we have the 3rd book in the Secret Book and Scone Society series, the Book of Candlelight. This book follows the death of a Cherokee potter in the area that Nora had really just met. And she is very hesitant to believe that this death was an accident. And thankfully, the authorities in the town are on her side as well. So she kind of gets embroiled in the investigation, but she's able to stay a little bit more out of danger because the authorities believe her. This book introduces a new character to the fold, and that is Sheldon, who works at Miracle Books with Nora. He is a quirky, wholesome guy, and I just really like him and his interaction with the ladies. He kind of becomes part of the group and shakes it up a little bit, and I just really like him a lot. He's a good character addition. Next, I read another graphic memoir, and that was Smile by Raina Telgemeier. And this book tells a story of how Raina got braces when she was younger. This book is a favorite in my classroom, which is the reason I picked it up. I really wanted to know why. What was the hype? Is it worth it? It kind of is. It's a pretty good book. My students love it. I really liked it, and I can totally see why they get a kick out of it. The Invention of Hugo Cabret was a read aloud with my 5th graders, and I was able to use my document camera in order to share this with them. The Invention of Hugo Cabret, if you don't know, is a 500-page book. About 290 of those pages are illustrations. This book won the Caldecott Medal Award, which goes to the best children's book illustrations. So usually it's not a 500-page book that's going to receive that medal. However, this medal is very, very well deserved. This is one of my favorite middle grade reads, and I always hesitated sharing it with my classes because 1, it's 500 pages, 2, how am I going to show them all those pictures? It just doesn't seem possible. Are they really going to get it? The nice thing about reading it aloud to them is that I controlled how fast they were looking at those pictures, because those pictures tell a lot of the story. And if you skip over those pictures, you're not going to get everything. So the pictures are so engaging. The writing is so engaging. The students loved it. I loved reading it again. I can't wait to share it with more classes. It's going to continue. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager is very creepy. You're going to want to read it during the day. I don't suggest reading it at night. We follow Maggie, whose family lived in Bainbury Hall for about 20 days when she was 3, 4, or 5. I can't remember which. And on the 20th day, they fled from the house in the middle of the night, claiming that the house was haunted by ghosts and they would never go back there. Her father then wrote a book about it, explaining those 20 days. It becomes a bestseller. It goes bananas. Like, she gets asked about it all the time. She hates it because she feels like the book is complete trash. She doesn't remember any of this ever happening. So she just thinks it's all a lie and is kind of mad at her dad for writing the book. When her father dies, she realizes that they still own the house and now she owns the house. So she goes back to Bainbury Hall in order to try to determine what actually happened during those 20 days that her and her family lived in the house. It's creepy. It keeps you on your toes. It has twists and turns, and I really liked it. This is my first Riley Sager, and I don't think it's going to be my last. So it was really good. Then we have the 4th secret book in Scone Society book, Ink and Shadows by Ellery Adams. This was my least favorite of the 4, and that's not really saying a lot because they all got 4 or 5 stars. So, I mean, it was still really good. This time we have a new shop owner and her daughter are the victims of the murder that happens. And there's this controversial group that's trying to shut down all of these businesses in the area because they don't have the right family values. And Miracle Books is on the chopping block for this place because she put Matilda, a Roald Dahl book that I love, in the window. So right there, this group, I just don't like this group because of that. Anyway, I digress. This one gets a little bit dark and it gets into the occult. It gets into using fear as a tactic to get what you want. And it was a little bit more intense than I like in my cozy mysteries, but I still loved it. So that was Ink and Shadows by Ellery Adams. Next, I read An Occasionally Happy Family by ClipChamp. This was an ARC, again, from NetGalley. I Loved it. We have Theo, who has an older sister, Laura, and Laura is just really into researching things and making sure that everything is precise and knowing exactly what's going on. That bugs Leo sometimes, but whatever. Their father, 2 years after their mother passes away, their father decides to take them on a road trip to try to kind of help deal with all of the grief that they're still feeling 2 years later, which is understandable. And they go on this road trip and they come across some of the funniest characters in the world. I really loved it. I loved how funny and quirky the family members were, how quirky the people they encountered were. I loved this intense look at family dynamics and how grief magnifies itself throughout the family, but that it added these sparks of humor that made it very enjoyable for me, and I think for my students, which is why I bought a copy. ARCs were very expensive for me this month. It's okay. Never mind. The next book that I read was a graphic novel of the Roald Dahl book, The Witches. And The Witches is my very, 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 very favorite Roald Dahl book, followed closely by Matilda. So, but I love The Witches. I read it so many times when I was little. It just was, I loved it. And this is a brand new book, a graphic novel adaptation by Penelope Bagiu. And what I loved about The Witches is this engaging storyline. The characters were wonderful. It was imaginative, creative, and like, I just loved it. And there were some things that maybe wouldn't have stood the test of time. And what I love about this adaptation is that Penelope Bagiu, I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but Penelope Bagiu modernizes the story of the witches without damaging the initial integrity of the original. And I just loved the graphic novel as much as I love the original story. So it's very well done. Beautiful Day by Ellen Hildebrandt, unfortunately, had the bad luck of being the book that I read after I binged listening to all of the Secret Book and Scone Society series. This was the next book that I listened to, and I didn't enjoy it. I was coming off of this super high from those cozy mysteries and had a massive book hangover because of it. And I don't think that I was going to enjoy the next book that I listened to as much, simply because of that. I did enjoy the story. I love how Ellen Hildebrandt tells the story. She's a marvelous storyteller. She's very engaging. She knows how to write characters that are flawed and wonderful and just really packs a punch into her novels. And that was all there. But there were some things that I didn't love about this. What we have is a mother passes away. And when she passes away, she leaves behind a notebook. And in the notebook are all these instructions that she's leaving for her youngest daughter, Jenna, for when she gets married. At the time that she's filling out the notebook, Jenna is not in a relationship. She had just broken up with somebody. There's no wedding in sight when she is making these plans. Her thought, the mother's thought, is that every girl wants their mother to be there when they're planning their wedding. And I totally get that. The problem is that Jenna takes these instructions so seriously that it kind of makes the mother come off as bossy. And I didn't like that. I didn't like how that came off. And I don't know if there's a way that that could have come off better. But it didn't sit well with me how bossy the mom appeared, because Jenna, the daughter, was so unwilling to veer off of the instructions in the notebook. And that wasn't the intention that the mother had. And Ellen Hildebrandt tried to make that very clear. It just didn't sit well with me. It was entertaining. I did like it, but it was just okay. So Beautiful Day suffered from that, I suffered from the book hangover. Open book then benefited from it. I listened to Jessica Simpson's memoir, Open Book, after I listened to Beautiful Day. And, it is raw and emotional, and she just really can tell a story. I really very much enjoyed it. And honestly, she talked about her cousin and the influence that her cousin had in her life, and her cousin passing away very early. And I sat in the Walmart parking lot crying when she was talking about that in her book. It was just a very poignant scene, and it was really well written and very open, as she said, and very honest. It's very good. Also very good was Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. This is a beautiful middle grade novel in verse about holding on to your identity after having to leave everything behind. Jude is the main character. She moves to America with her mother because her country is war-torn, and she's trying to escape that. She wants to hold on to her heritage that she left behind, but she also wants to embrace a new American identity as well. And it's very difficult for her. And it's just an incredibly moving novel watching her go through that. And one thing that really stuck with me that I think kind of sticks, they wanted it to stick with you because it's on the back of the book, was when she said, I'm learning how to be sad and happy at the same time. And isn't that what we all have to learn how to do? It's just a beautifully written book. I'm a sucker for a novel in verse, and this one did not disappoint. The next book, again, was a read aloud. I had about 10 days after I finished The Invention of Hugo Cabret with my fifth graders that I would be able to read to them. And I remember reading Soup, the Soup books. I don't remember if it was Soup, but the Soup books when I was about their age. And I remembered them being kind of like every chapter was a story within itself. So if I didn't get through all of the chapters, it would be okay. And Soup had 10 chapters. So I figured, great. So I started reading it one day, and they cracked up in the first chapter, and they were like, yeah, let's keep reading this. It was a lot of fun. We have Rob is the main character based off of the author Rob, and his best friend is Soup. And Soup is based off of Robert Newton Peck's best friend growing up, who went by Soup. It's not exactly a memoir, but it is a fictionalized version of their adventures together. Another read aloud that I had was The Face on the Milk Carton by Carolyn B. Cooney. This was with my eighth graders. I loved this book when I was about their age, and I love the discussion that can be had with the themes inside this novel. We have Janie, who is sitting at the lunch table one day, and she grabs the milk carton from her friend and looks at the missing child on the milk carton, which used to be a thing for those of you that don't know. And she recognizes the child on the milk carton as herself, and it drives her crazy. You watch her go through this absolute meltdown where she's like, how can I be kidnapped? I love my parents. They're wonderful people. I don't remember being kidnapped. Why is my picture on this milk carton? And she just goes into this spiral, and it opens up a wonderful conversation, and it's just a really engaging story. They liked it I liked sharing it with them. It was a win-win. Mere Christianity is the book that I mentioned before that was a buddy read with Krista, led by Krista at Books and Jams, with a bunch of other booktubers. It was really awesome getting to know these other people that I didn't really know before that. We had wonderful conversations about what was in the book, which made my enjoyment of the book that much better, and also made my understanding of the book that much better, which is kind of crazy because C.S. Lewis has this way of taking super intense concepts and making them incredibly simple to understand. By using wonderful descriptions and great explanations and beautiful memoirs. So again, I'm going to link the discussions down below of all of those 4 discussions about Mere Christianity if you're interested in checking those out. The last book that I listened to was City Spies. So we have Sarah, who is a hacker. She is, 12, 13 years old. And she is about to be put into the New York foster care juvenile detention system when she is recruited by a man who goes by the name Mother for a top secret mission with MI6. He kind of makes her disappear. And she joins 5 other kids, or 4 other kids, all named after the city where they were originally recruited to handle this highly engaging mission. It is very action-packed, wonderful, highly recommend, and very excited to grab the second book. So, and lastly, I finished off my month with Better Together by Christine RICCIO. This was an ARC from NetGalley. It was also my most disappointing read this month. And that makes me sad. I didn't hate it at all, but it wasn't what I was expecting. And I don't know what I was expecting because it was fairly straightforward. I should have expected it. It was a cross between The Parent Trap and Freaky Friday. That's what they said it was. And it was exactly that. They did not lie. We have 2 girls, Jamie and Siri, and Siri's 18, Jamie's 20. They live on opposite ends of the country. Their parents had a very messy divorce, and they decided it was better to just keep them separated instead of having to deal with their parents' hatred all the time. They meet during a spa retreat, which is very humorous. Their reuniting is very humorous. I very much did enjoy that part. And craziness ensues as they realize what has happened and what their parents have done in keeping them separated all these years. So they decide to switch places. Parent Trap, right? They look enough alike that they can make some changes, and they'll be, okay. They'll be able to pull it off. Then what happens though is there's this Freaky Friday magic that happens when we bring in Freaky Friday, where to the outside world, they are magically transformed into the other person. So when they look into a mirror, they see themselves, but when they look down at themselves, they see themselves, but if they look in the mirror, they see their sister. It's a little bit jarring. Part of this magic has to do with like sneezing on each other, and it like opens, like the magic part was a little weird. And I don't know that I could have been done better. I think that there's definitely an audience to this book. I just don't think it's me. I'm glad I read it. There were definitely parts that I liked. I didn't like Jamie or Siri, and that really caused me to not like the book as much, but I loved some of the side characters that we meet within the book. So as I said, I'm glad that I read it. I did enjoy parts of it, but it definitely was not a book that I would want to read again, but there are people that I would recommend it to. As a middle school teacher, it's definitely not a book that I would have in my classroom. I do have a lot of YA in my classroom, but this is definitely not one that I would. If I was a high school teacher, I would probably consider it. I did enjoy it, and I'm glad that I read it, and I can definitely see an audience for this book. So there you go. Those are the 22 books that I read. Have you read any of these books? Did anything sound good to you or look like something that you might put on your TBR? Let me know down in the chat. And I look forward to chatting with you later. Happy reading. Bye.